The galaxy had long forgotten Earth. To most star nations, the humans were nothing more than a broken memory. 500,000 years ago, their fleets had burned bright in the darkness, fighting wars that shook the stars. But then they had vanished, swept away by their own destruction. Civilizations rose and fell, empires claimed the void, and the name of Earth became nothing more than a story told to children. A ghost tale. A silence too old to disturb. But silence has weight. Silence can hide more than noise. Across the Wrathborn Empire, whispers began to travel. At first, they were only rumors spoken in taverns by traders with too much drink. A shape in the darkness, they said. A fleet of old ships drifting in black space. Most laughed. The Wrathborn were proud conquerors. Their fleets had crushed rebellion after rebellion. Their warlords laughed at the idea of ghosts. For the Wrathborn, power was real only when fire reigned and enemies burned. Still, the whispers did not stop. A Wrathborn patrol ship, the Iron Fang, vanished near the abandoned Heli's Rift. No wreckage. No distress call. The captain's name was erased from Wrathborn records, a sign of shame. The Empire called it an accident. But smugglers swore they had seen something in the rift, hulking shadows moving with purpose, like ships older than history. On a cold mining world, an old historian spoke quietly to his students. Do you not see? These are not phantoms. This is the ghost fleet of Earth. When humans fell, their ships were entombed. But perhaps, they were never truly gone. His students laughed, calling him a fool. Yet even they felt a shiver when he spoke the words. For deep inside the rift, something had awakened. The ships were there. Massive, rusting, broken, but not dead. Their hulls bore scars from wars 500,000 years old. Their cannons were silent, but their presence was undeniable. They had waited in silence, hidden from the galaxy, their systems cold and dark. But now, something had changed. Lights flickered inside the long-dead vessels. Engines breathed again with pale blue fire. Across dozens of massive warships, metal groaned as if the ships themselves remembered. They were not drifting anymore. They were moving. The Wrathborn did not know. Not yet. But others had begun to notice. Traders reported strange sensor echoes. Explorers returned pale and shaking, refusing to explain what they had seen. And every report carried the same message: whatever was inside the rift was not natural. In the Wrathborn capital, the High Warlord dismissed the talk with a growl. The humans are dead. Their bones are dust. Their weapons are forgotten. No phantom can threaten us. But his advisors were less certain. Fear was an infection, and it was spreading through the ranks. Soldiers whispered about the return of Earth, a story that made even Wrathborn blood run cold. Because if the stories were true, then humanity had not vanished. Humanity had waited. The truth came suddenly. A Wrathborn fleet of 30 warships entered the Heli's Rift to prove the rumors false. The Empire broadcast the mission live across its systems, turning it into a display of strength. Watch and see, their admirals declared. The rift holds nothing but shadows. At first, the transmission showed only black space. The Wrathborn ships moved with confidence, their searchlights cutting through the void. Then, slowly, something vast came into view, metal hulls, scarred and ancient, towering like sleeping giants. The Wrathborn laughed. Old wrecks, one captain scoffed. Dead ships. Nothing more. But then the lights came on. Across the silent fleet, thousands of windows glowed. Engines flared like awakening stars. One by one, the ships of Earth's ghost fleet opened their eyes after 500,000 years of silence. The Wrathborn transmissions ended in screams. The galaxy saw only a final image before the broadcast went dark, a massive battleship, its hull scorched and rusted, its name barely readable across the metal. The letters were human, the language ancient, but the meaning clear. UNS Retribution. And then, silence again. In the days that followed, no Wrathborn ship returned from the rift. But traders swore they saw fire in that sector of space. They spoke of human warships moving in perfect formation, their weapons glowing like suns, their hulls scarred but unbroken. The ghost fleet was awake, and it was not wandering. It was hunting. The galaxy had laughed at Earth's memory. They had mocked the idea of human strength. But now, the silence of 500,000 years was broken. And the first to feel its wrath would be the Wrathborn. Because the ghost fleet had not forgotten. It had waited. And now, it had returned. And somewhere, deep inside the command ship, a voice whispered through the static of ancient machines. A voice that was not supposed to exist anymore. Humans do not forgive. Humans do not forget. The Wrathborn Empire had thought ghosts were harmless. But what they had awoken was not a memory. It was vengeance. And vengeance was alive. The Wrathborn Empire was built on fear. Entire species bent the knee to them because no one dared stand against their fleets. But after the Hellies Rift incident, fear began to move in the opposite direction. Across the Empire's worlds, people whispered in secret. The Ghost Fleet is real. The humans have returned. The High Warlord roared against the rumors, calling them lies, but silence filled his halls when he demanded reports from the Rift. No fleet returned. No signal answered. 30 warships, gone. Erased as if they had never existed. The Wrathborn were too proud to admit fear, but their enemies noticed. The old rivals of the Empire, the Dyraki clans, began to watch with interest. If the Ghost Fleet destroys Wrathborn, they said, perhaps the galaxy has a new balance of power. Even the Syndicate traders, who feared no law, began to alter their routes, avoiding the Hellies Rift like it was cursed. But the Ghost Fleet did not stay hidden. It struck suddenly. On the edge of Wrathborn territory, a military supply station orbited a dying star. The station was heavily armed and thought itself untouchable. Its commander laughed when his sensors first showed movement in the darkness. Asteroids, he said. Or broken satellites. But then the shapes grew larger. Dozens of them. The old warships emerged from the void like shadows given form. Their hulls were scarred, their plating cracked, but their movements were precise, disciplined, like predators that had been starving too long. At the front was the UNS Retribution, its massive cannon glowing with power not seen in the galaxy for 500,000 years. The Wrathborn commander tried to open fire, but his station's guns never spoke. Before the Wrathborn could act, blue beams of energy ripped across the void. The Ghost Fleet fired in perfect silence. Not a sound, not a warning. Only destruction. The first blasts tore through the station's defenses as if they were made of paper. Wrathborn fighters scrambled, but they were swatted down by point defense guns older than their species. Within minutes, the supply station was nothing but fire and drifting wreckage. The Wrathborn commander managed to send one last message before his ship broke apart. His voice was shaking, filled with terror. They are not ghosts. They are real. Humans. His transmission cut off with a scream. The galaxy heard it. For the first time in 500,000 years, human weapons had spoken again. The Wrathborn Empire exploded with fury. Fleets were dispatched in every direction, warlords swearing oaths of blood. We will crush them, the High Warlord growled before the Imperial Council. We will show the galaxy that humans are nothing but dust. His words were strong, but his advisors noticed something new in his eyes, doubt. Because the Ghost Fleet was not acting like wreckage. It was fighting like a military force. Coordinated, sharp, merciless. Someone, or something, was commanding those ships. And whoever they were, they knew the Wrathborn's tactics. They knew how to strike where it hurt most. Rumors began to spread that the Ghost Fleet carried more than machines. Some said there were humans aboard, preserved in frozen sleep for eons, now awakened. Others whispered that the ships were alive, guided by ancient intelligence, their captains' voices lingering inside the circuits. No one knew the truth, but one fact became clear: the Ghost Fleet had chosen its enemy. And that enemy was the Wrathborn Empire. On the planet Vraxus Prime, Wrathborn civilians saw the truth with their own eyes. The Ghost Fleet descended without warning, targeting military garrisons but sparing the city below. From the surface, crowds watched as the old human battleships unleashed destruction with frightening precision. A single Wrathborn capital ship attempted to fight back, but the Retribution's main cannon spoke once, and the capital ship vanished in a ball of light. The civilians did not cheer. They only stared in silence. For the first time, they realized that the Wrathborn were not untouchable. That something greater had returned to the galaxy. The Ghost Fleet left as quickly as it had come, vanishing into the void, leaving only ruins behind. But the message was clear. The humans had not come for random strikes. They had a purpose. They were choosing their battles. They were preparing for something larger. In the Wrathborn capital, the High Warlord gathered his council. He slammed his fist against the table, claws cracking steel. We will not fear ghosts. We will not fear the dead. But his words rang hollow. Because every Wrathborn in that chamber had seen the same broadcast. The last image of the UNS Retribution as it turned its guns away from Vraxus Prime. Its hull was blackened, scarred, ancient, but its name still shone in faint letters across the side. Retribution. The word itself was a promise. And the galaxy understood what it meant. The humans had returned not for peace, not for diplomacy. They had returned for vengeance. Far across the stars, the Ghost Fleet regrouped in silence. Inside the dark command bridge of the Retribution, lights glowed on consoles untouched for ages. A voice, mechanical yet human, whispered through static. Targets confirmed. The Wrathborn will pay. The galaxy had laughed at humans once. The Wrathborn had mocked their extinction. But now, with every strike, every fire, every broken fleet, the laughter was fading. The Ghost Fleet was no longer silent. It was war. The Wrathborn Empire had never known humiliation. Their warlords built power on the belief that no one could ever strike them and live. Yet in only weeks, the Ghost Fleet had destroyed 3 supply stations, burned a garrison on Vraxus Prime, and vanished into the void without leaving a single wreck of their own. The High Warlord raged in the council chamber, his claws tearing lines in the table. They are not gods. They are machines. They bleed. And we will make them bleed. His voice thundered, but his generals avoided his eyes. They had seen the images. They had heard the terrified voices of Wrathborn commanders begging for help before silence consumed them. Still, pride forced them forward. A plan was made. The Wrathborn would set a trap. In a system near the rift, the Empire built bait, a fleet of 60 warships gathered around a false supply depot. It was made to look weak, exposed, an easy target for raiders. Hidden in the shadows of nearby moons were another 100 ships, their weapons primed, their crews ready. The trap was simple: draw the Ghost Fleet in, surround them, and erase them forever. It was bold. It was desperate. It was Wrathborn. Admiral K.A. Wrath, chosen to lead the ambush, stood on the bridge of his flagship. He was confident, yet unease pulled at him. He had fought 100 battles, but this was different. His enemies were not rebels, not rival empires. They were humans. A name older than memory. And deep in his heart, he wondered if he was about to meet something beyond his strength. For 3 days, they waited. Nothing. The Wrathborn soldiers grew restless. Some mocked the Ghost Fleet as cowards. Others whispered that the humans could smell a trap. On the 4th day, the shadows moved. The Ghost Fleet arrived without fanfare, their ships sliding from the dark like predators. 20 vessels, scarred and rusted, but unmistakably alive. At their head, the UNS Retribution loomed, its cannon glowing faintly. "They have taken the bait," K.A. Wrath growled. "All ships, attack!" The Wrathborn fleet surged forward, 100 guns blazing. The void filled with fire. Missiles streaked, lasers slashed, and the bait station disintegrated in the opening barrage. To the Wrathborn, it looked like victory. No fleet could survive such fury. But the humans did. The Ghost Fleet moved with impossible discipline, their ancient hulls absorbing punishment, their formation unbroken. Blue beams cut through the Wrathborn lines with terrifying precision. Fighters that tried to swarm were shredded by defenses faster than thought. Whole Wrathborn cruisers vanished under the fire of weapons no one had seen in 500,000 years. K.A. Wrath roared orders, trying to press the attack. But something was wrong. The Ghost Fleet was not retreating. It was driving forward, right through the trap. Then K.A. Wrath understood. The humans had known. They had walked into the trap willingly. And now, they were turning it into their own. From the darkness beyond the system, more human ships appeared. 30 more vessels, hidden until the moment of slaughter. They fell upon the Wrathborn like wolves, cutting off their retreat, smashing their flanks. Suddenly, the hunters were the hunted. The Wrathborn fleet began to break. Captains screamed for reinforcements that would never come. Ship after ship was torn apart, their burning hulks drifting into the void. The trap had collapsed into chaos, and in that chaos, the Ghost Fleet thrived. On the bridge of his flagship, K.A. Wrath felt his heart sink. He watched the Retribution turn its massive gun toward him. The weapon glowed like a star about to be born. For one terrible second, he thought of surrender, but he knew there would be no mercy. The last thing he saw was light. When the battle ended, the system was silent. 100 Wrathborn ships had gone in. Barely a dozen limped out, broken and burning. The Ghost Fleet had lost some vessels too, but not nearly enough to matter. Their discipline, their tactics, their terrifying patience had crushed the trap and turned it into a massacre. The news spread like fire. Across the galaxy, species that had once bowed to the Wrathborn began to whisper again. The humans are back. The Ghost Fleet cannot be stopped. Even the Empire bleeds. For the first time in its long reign, the Wrathborn Empire looked vulnerable. And inside the UNS Retribution, the ancient systems hummed with life. On the command bridge, a voice, calm and relentless, echoed through the static. Wrathborn resistance, broken. Prepare for next strike. The humans were not only fighting. They were advancing. And the galaxy realized a new truth: if the Ghost Fleet could destroy the Empire's trap, then nothing could hold them back. The Wrathborn Empire bled. Their fleets, once feared across the stars, now limped home broken and burning. Entire systems whispered in disbelief. The trap at Heli's Rift had been their chance to prove dominance, but instead it had ended in shame. 100 ships had gone in. Nearly all were destroyed. The survivors returned with hollow eyes and trembling voices, muttering the same words again and again. The humans knew. They were waiting for us. Fear spread like a plague. On frontier colonies, Wrathborn citizens no longer trusted their leaders' promises. "We are safe," the High Warlord had declared, but even his roar could not silence the trembling of his people. They had seen the broadcasts. They had seen the UNS Retribution cut through fleets like a blade through smoke. They had seen how human weapons turned Wrathborn pride into ash. The galaxy was watching too. The syndicate traders began cancelling contracts with the Empire, unwilling to risk routes near Ghost Fleet territory. The Daraki clans, old enemies of the Wrathborn, started sharpening their blades and whispering of rebellion. Even neutral empires that had stayed far from Wrathborn wars now studied the situation carefully, wondering if the balance of power had shifted forever. Because if the humans had returned, then no throne in the galaxy was safe. In secret chambers across distant worlds, leaders asked the same question: who commanded the Ghost Fleet? Were there humans alive aboard those ships? Had they slept in frozen tombs for 500,000 years, waiting for this moment? Or was it something else, machines that still carried human voices, ancient AIS burning with vengeance? No one knew. But everyone feared. On the Wrathborn capital world, the High Warlord called an emergency council. His generals filled the chamber, their armor scarred, their pride wounded. He slammed his clawed fist into the steel table. Enough of this fear. They are not gods. They are old machines, nothing more. We will find their nest, and we will burn it. But one general, older than the rest, spoke softly. What if they are not machines? What if they are humans themselves? What if their vengeance has been waiting longer than we can imagine? His words earned growls, but no one laughed. Not anymore. The High Warlord snarled, but the truth was plain: his empire was crumbling. Already, whispers of rebellion reached his ears. Slaves on the mining worlds refused to work. Conquered planets began to resist. The name human was becoming more than a rumor. It was becoming a banner. And the Ghost Fleet kept moving. They struck with purpose. Not random raids, but calculated blows. They destroyed fuel depots, command outposts, and shipyards. Every strike weakened the Wrathborn's ability to fight. Every strike told the galaxy the same message: the humans had come not for survival, but for vengeance. On the world of Dravos, a Wrathborn governor tried to rally his troops. "Stand strong," he shouted as human warships appeared in orbit. "We are the Empire." But when the Ghost Fleet's guns opened fire, his soldiers broke. Many fled. Some even surrendered to the humans, though the humans never landed. They destroyed the military garrison, then vanished into the stars, leaving the city untouched. To the conquered people of Dravos, the meaning was clear. The Ghost Fleet did not care about ruling. They cared only about punishing Wrathborn power. And the people began to cheer in silence, daring to hope. The Wrathborn Empire was cracking. And the cracks grew wider with every human strike. In the shadows of the Heli's Rift, inside the command bridge of the UNS Retribution, the systems pulsed with light. Screens glowed, and ancient machinery whispered in languages forgotten by the galaxy. A voice, calm and heavy, drifted through static. Phase 2 complete. Wrathborn supply lines broken. Continue with vengeance directive. Other voices answered, mechanical yet strangely human. Perhaps echoes of the long-dead captains. Perhaps something else. Confirmed. Targets locked. Humanity endures. The ships themselves seemed alive, carrying the will of a species thought extinct. And still, the galaxy wondered, if the Ghost Fleet was this powerful, why had it waited so long? Why had it slept in silence for 500,000 years? Some said the humans had chosen this exact moment, that they had waited for the Wrathborn to rise so their vengeance could be perfect. Others feared a darker truth, that the Ghost Fleet was only the beginning, and something far greater waited behind it. The Wrathborn sensed this too. In their desperation, they began to prepare something terrible. Secret projects, weapons drawn from forbidden science, plans born of fear rather than strength. The High Warlord whispered to his inner circle, "If the humans want war, we will give them fire that even they cannot endure." But fear has a way of clouding judgment. And the Wrathborn were rushing toward mistakes that would only make them weaker. The galaxy watched, holding its breath. The Ghost Fleet had proven it could fight. But what it truly wanted, the reason for its wrath, was still hidden in silence. And somewhere, deep inside the Retribution, a final message flickered on an old, cracked screen. Ancient words, written in a language the Wrathborn had never cared to learn. For every world burned. For every child lost. For every voice silenced. The Wrathborn thought the humans were hunting fleets. But the Ghost Fleet's target was far greater. They were hunting the Empire itself. The Wrathborn Empire had ruled with iron claws for centuries. Entire planets had bent under their shadow, their people living in fear of fleets that burned any who resisted. But fear is fragile. Once cracked, it spreads like fire. And now, the Ghost Fleet had shattered it completely. On the frontier worlds, rebellions began to rise. Slaves who had once whispered in the dark now shouted in the streets. They carried stolen rifles, old blades, even farming tools, daring to strike against their masters. "The humans have returned," they cried. "The Wrathborn can be broken." On Vraxus Prime, miners stopped their work and seized the landing pads. On Dravos, entire cities refused to obey the Empire's orders. Wrathborn soldiers tried to crush them, but whispers of the Ghost Fleet's victories gave courage to the weak. Every time the Retribution's cannon was seen, another world dared to rise. The High Warlord raged in his palace. His claws ripped steel from the walls, his eyes burning with fury. "They are vermin. They are nothing," he shouted. But his advisors no longer met his gaze. They had seen too much. Entire fleets gone, worlds in revolt, supply lines cut. The Empire was bleeding from within, and the humans had not even needed to conquer. They had only needed to show the galaxy that Wrathborn were not invincible. But the Ghost Fleet was not finished. Their strikes grew bolder. Shipyards burned, star fortresses shattered, command stations erased in silence. Wherever Wrathborn tried to rebuild, the humans were already waiting. Their weapons were old, their hulls scarred, but their tactics were flawless. Every battle was not just victory, it was a lesson. A reminder that humans, even after extinction, fought wars like no other. And in the darkness, the mystery deepened. Who led them? Some Wrathborn survivors claimed they heard voices, human voices, over their comms before destruction fell. Others swore that the ships themselves fought with the fury of living beings, as if the captains who once commanded them had become part of the steel. The galaxy did not know which to believe. But one thing was clear, the Ghost Fleet carried the will of Earth. The Wrathborn tried to strike back. In secret, they unleashed forbidden weapons, swarms of bioengineered beasts, suns cracked with unstable reactors, and fleets of hastily built warships. But nothing worked. Every desperate measure only exposed their weakness. The humans had been silent for 500,000 years, and now they were not simply fighting, they were dismantling an empire. And the galaxy was watching. The Dyraki clans declared open rebellion, striking Wrathborn convoys. The Syndicate began selling supplies to rebel worlds instead of the Empire. Even smaller empires that had once bowed in silence began to arm themselves, hoping to be ready for the day Wrathborn rule finally fell. In every dark corner of space, one truth spread faster than fire: the humans were back, and the Wrathborn were falling. On the capital world, the High Warlord's fury turned to fear. He stood alone in his chamber, staring at the galaxy map. Red lights marked his empire, but each day, more turned black. Systems lost. Colonies in revolt. Fleets erased. His empire was shrinking, and at its edges, like wolves circling prey, the Ghost Fleet moved closer. He whispered into the silence, "Why now? Why return after so long?" But no answer came. Only the memory of his general's words: perhaps they never left. Perhaps they were always waiting. The Wrathborn began to whisper too, not of victory, but of survival. Some warlords abandoned their posts, fleeing with their families to distant stars. Others considered surrender, though they knew humans would show no mercy. The proud empire that once united worlds under fear was breaking apart piece by piece. And still, the Ghost Fleet pressed on. In the rift, the UNS Retribution hovered like a shadow over the stars. On its bridge, lights flickered across consoles, and ancient systems hummed with purpose. A voice, mechanical but heavy with something deeper, spoke into the void. Wrathborn resistance collapsing. Rebellion rising. Directive advancing. Other voices echoed across the fleet. Continue campaign. No Wrathborn stronghold shall remain. Vengeance incomplete. The ships themselves seemed to hunger, as though 500,000 years of silence had built into this unstoppable storm. And the galaxy finally began to realize a terrifying truth. The Ghost Fleet was not only hunting Wrathborn. It was breaking the foundation of power itself. Any empire that ruled by fear now wondered if humans might come for them next. On one rebel world, a child looked up at the sky as a human battleship passed overhead. Its hull was black with scars, but its name still shone faintly through the rust, UNS Valiant. The people bowed their heads in silence, not from fear, but from awe. For them, the Ghost Fleet was no longer just vengeance. It was justice. But justice is never gentle. In the Wrathborn Palace, a message arrived on the High Warlord's desk. It was simple, written in old human script, translated by trembling advisors. For every world you burned, we burn you. For every life you crushed, we rise. This is not the end of humanity. This is the end of you. The High Warlord stared at the words, his claws shaking. For the first time in his life, he knew the taste of true fear. The Ghost Fleet was no longer just breaking his empire. It was coming for him. The Wrathborn Armada was burning. What had begun as their moment of triumph had turned into a nightmare. They had come with hundreds of ships, prepared to crush the old Ghost Fleet of Earth, but the humans fought like no species the galaxy had ever seen. The battleships of Earth, long thought to be extinct relics, moved with frightening precision. Their cannons tore through Wrathborn steel like it was paper. Entire clusters of Wrathborn cruisers vanished in blinding flashes of light. Admiral Kalan of the Wrathborn Empire shouted commands, his voice shaking. Fall back. Reform lines. Do not let them cut through the core. But it was useless. The humans did not fight like the Empire's other enemies. They hunted. They struck with anger that had been buried for 500,000 years. They were not just defending. They were avenging. On the bridge of the Eternal Dawn, Captain Mara watched the battlefield. Her eyes burned, not from fear, but from purpose. Target their command ships. Leave no escape, she ordered. The crew responded with fierce discipline. These were not living humans. Many were echoes, digital minds preserved from Earth's golden age. Yet they fought with the same spirit as the ancestors who had once sworn never to bow. A Wrathborn dreadnought fired its superweapon, a beam that could slice moons apart. The beam struck one of the ghost ships, the Iron Veil. For a moment, silence covered the battlefield. But when the light faded, the Iron Veil still stood. Its hull glowed red-hot, but it endured. Then, with cold precision, it turned its main cannon and fired a shot that ripped the Wrathborn dreadnought in half. Panic spread through the Empire's fleet. They should not exist, one Wrathborn officer screamed. Earth was ash. Another tried to flee, but the humans had already surrounded the escape vectors. Ship after ship exploded, painting the dark void with fire. The Wrathborn Emperor, watching from his distant throne world, slammed his claws into the armrest. His council trembled in silence. How can ghosts defy us? He roared. No one dared answer. Deep in their hearts, they knew the truth. The humans were no ordinary race. They were the one enemy that the Empire could never fully destroy. On the battlefield, Captain Mara's voice filled the comms. This is only the beginning. For every human world you burned, for every city you erased, we return with wrath greater than the stars. Her words carried across open channels, and Wrathborn soldiers everywhere heard them. The message was clear. Humanity was not just back. Humanity was justice. As the last Wrathborn flagship detonated, the galaxy itself seemed to shiver. The silence that followed was heavier than war drums. The Ghost Fleet had proven what the Empire feared most. Humans could return from extinction, and when they did, they brought vengeance with them. But as the fires faded, Mara looked at the endless horizon of stars. She knew this was only one battle. The Wrathborn Empire spanned thousands of systems. This victory was a spark, but sparks could ignite whole galaxies. Prepare the fleet, she said quietly. Earth rises again. And the galaxy will remember. Somewhere, in the ruins of forgotten space, more human ships stirred. Dormant AIS awakened. Old war codes flickered alive. The Ghost Fleet was not just a handful of survivors, it was a storm waiting to be unleashed. The Wrathborn had laughed when they thought Earth was gone. They mocked humanity as nothing but dust. But now, with every battle, with every strike, the galaxy understood the truth: humanity never died. Humanity waited. Humanity endured. And when humanity returned, it was not with mercy. It was with wrath. The stars shone cold and bright, watching the rebirth of a legend. The story of mankind had begun again, and this time, the galaxy would never forget.